I am Laura Dixon, and you are listening to the Naturally Thin for Life podcast, episode number 144, The 3 Phases of Being Naturally Thin. Welcome to the Naturally Thin for Life podcast. I'm going to teach you how to get out of your diet brain so that you too can be naturally thin for life. No counting, restricting, or obsessing. I am going to take the mystery out of it for you so that you can become naturally thin starting today. Are you ready? Let's do this. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I can't wait to share this with you today. I've really been thinking about my philosophy in being naturally thin and why what I teach is different than what I see anywhere else. And it's really from my own experience and watching the experience of me helping the hundreds of women in the Naturally Thin for Life program to see really what allows them to have the most rapid results. And you heard Sue last week talk about what helped her create the success of losing 30 pounds in 90 days. And I've been thinking more and more about how it just is truly something that is just not on my mind, losing weight anymore, and what makes it easier and easier for me. And a lot of it is what I'm going to teach you today in the 3 phases of being naturally thin. And I'll get to each phase and explain what each phase is so you can really see where you are on your journey and also see where you're headed and see in this episode why it's so important to lose weight in the same way you keep it off. It's why I so firmly believe that an idea or a concept of needing a quote unquote maintenance mode is so detrimental to those of us that just want the freedom of being naturally thin, that want it to be something that's automatic and a habit. The idea of a maintenance mode means you need to be in a maintenance mode, which means you need to be like doing something rather than just being naturally thin. And I'm going to share with you how you never need a maintenance mode when you understand these 3 phases of being naturally thin. And one of the things I've also noticed just witnessing the women in the Naturally Thin for Life program and understanding how I think about food, how I think about my body, and then just noticing and hearing other people talk about their experience with food or dieting or losing weight is I will often hear people kind of just out when I'm out and about talking to people, or when I overhear people talking about dieting or losing weight, is they will often say, well, I didn't feel terrible. like I ate some food and I didn't feel terrible afterwards. Like I went to bed, I didn't feel terrible. I maybe went to a party and I didn't feel terrible. And I just want you to think about this. Is your goal to not feel terrible? I'm like, what? That's the goal? That's it? To just not feel terrible? Ugh. Like that sounds terrible in and of itself. What if instead your goal was to feel energized, alive, vibrant, to feel amazing? Not just to feel good, but to feel incredible in your own body, to feel light and fit and strong, to feel alive, limitless, to feel infinite, to feel on fire, to feel so proud in your own skin, to feel energy all day, every day. What if that was your goal? And that doesn't mean you're going to feel 100% that way all of the time, but what if that's where you took your mind to and that was your intention for how you wanted to feel in your body? Because there's so much language that we can use to describe what it feels like to feel in our body. Why not think about how do I create a body that feels light and fit and strong and alive and energized and vibrant all of the time, rather than, well, my goal is to just not feel terrible. And I want you to imagine what your life would be like, how your experience in your own body would be different if that was the type of language you used around how you wanted to feel. When you think about how you want to go to bed, do you want to go to bed? Do you want to crawl under the covers feeling energized and alive and vibrant? Or do you want to crawl into bed and get under the covers feeling fine? I mean, not terrible, not great, but not terrible. What if you went to bed at night and you felt incredible in your body? What would that be like? And so I want you to use this podcast episode to really teach your brain how to think that way, because it really is a gift that you can give to yourself. And it really is also what creates the freedom of being able to see any food that you know isn't going to feel good in your body and not even thinking twice about it. And there are 3 phases to get there. And it's important that you understand you're going to go through these 3 phases. It's inevitable. I've seen it happen time and time again. Every single person goes through every one of these phases. Now, it looks slightly different for different people, but there is a sense of each phase you will go through, and you will shed the weight along the way. And so it's not like you got to work through the 3 phases and then you start to lose weight. You lose weight as you go. And it creates the snowball that then has you just reaching your naturally thin weight. I can't tell you how many times I have heard women say, I just got on the scale and it was just like, obviously I'm at this weight. That's how they describe seeing their naturally thin weight reflected to them on the scale. They will be so in love with feeling so alive and vibrant and energized in their body, often 10, 15, 20 pounds before they get to their naturally thin weight, that it will become so habitual, so automatic, they aren't surprised when they get to their naturally thin weight. They literally step on the scale and their experience is like, obviously, of course, there's not a question in their minds. And when they have that experience, I also know they never fear and worry about the weight coming back. And that is the freedom. All right. So before we dive into the 3 phases of being naturally thin, if you are enjoying the podcast, getting a lot out of it, loving it, take a minute to write a review and leave a review. And when you are writing your review, tell me what are some of your favorite episodes, some of the favorite things you've learned, maybe some of your favorite aha moments. And then if you have any questions for me about your personal journey or in general or about me, you can leave any question that you have for me. And I'm going to dedicate a podcast episode or 2 to answering those questions that you have left for me. And for those of you that have already left a question, I have seen them and I am going to answer them for you in an upcoming episode. And in the coming weeks as well, I'm also going to answer some coaching requests that I've gotten inside of the Naturally Thin for Life program so you can get a better sense of some of the coaching that I give real time to the people in the program. And so one of the features of the program is we have live calls every week, and the women can also submit written coaching requests before the live calls. So they can submit written coaching requests at any time we have a Q&A board that's open 24/7 for them. But we have these live calls. And so you can either come live and ask me any of your questions, ask for any coaching, and I'll either bring you on the Zoom screen and we'll have a 2-way conversation, or you can type your question to me and we will have a conversation that way. And also you can submit any coaching requests by email in advance of that call, and I will, if we have time, answer and give you my coaching real time. And so I've gotten a couple of written coaching requests that I'm just going to share the general gist of and give you and share with you my coaching response to them, because I know that it will benefit so many of you. And as we go through this podcast episode, and I will talk more about it at the end, so stay on if you're interested, I want you to see how being naturally thin is so much closer than you might think. That it doesn't matter how long you've struggled. It doesn't matter if you have been thinking and obsessing about your weight since you were 10 or if it started 2 years ago. It doesn't matter how long, because being naturally thin is how you are designed to eat and live. And when you go through these 3 phases of being naturally thin, you will see how true that is, how your body is giving you the roadmap to your naturally thin weight at every step along the way, and how working through these 3 phases creates the inevitability of you reaching your naturally thin weight. And so to really help you see how being naturally thin is closer than you think, right now we are offering for you to join the Naturally Thin for Life program for 30 days of access. And that 30 days of access includes a hard copy workbook that will be delivered right to your doorstep, so that you can get that companion guide to the program and you can implement what I teach you inside of the Naturally Thin for Life program, so that you can truly see how it is so much closer than you think. So if you're interested in joining for 30 days of access to the Naturally Thin for Life program, you can head to lauradixoncoaching.com/join, get all the details there. And I will share a little bit more about that opportunity for you as well at the end of this podcast episode. Okay, so let's dive into the 3 phases of being naturally thin. All right, phase 1. This is just regular overeating discomfort. This is the phase that we all know when you feel weighed down and heavy and lethargic and bloated, when you simply ate way too much and you just feel terrible. When you have gone to Thanksgiving dinner or a holiday party, or you binged at night, or you ate 3 servings of dinner when you were satisfied after 1, and you just feel so uncomfortable in your body that you want to forget that you even ate that much, and you just wish the feeling would go away ASAP. You're like, I just want to go to bed, wake up tomorrow morning and pretend this never happened. This is the first phase of discomfort that you will overcome. Regular overeating. And it is by far the easiest because the simple skill of releasing emotions causes this phase of regular overeating discomfort to completely disappear. Because it doesn't mean there is zero discomfort ever, ever, ever. I'm going to talk more about what overeating discomfort feels like in layer 2 and layer 3. But this regular old overeating discomfort only happens when you experience emotions and you push them down, you ignore them, you try to talk yourself out of them, you try to distract yourself from them. And it really happens in an intense way and in a compounding way, where I used to feel really anxious and then want to eat something to make my anxiety go away, which never actually worked, but I used to think it would. And I would do this most nights where I would feel really anxious. I would often be procrastinating, doing something that I needed to do, work or getting something done around the house, or just wanting to escape being with myself. And I would start to eat something. And then I would feel uncomfortable physically and anxious again, and then kind of compound that anxiety with the feeling of guilt. And then I would eat something else. So it maybe start with, well, I'm just going to have a couple crackers. And then this was when I still ate dairy, and now the thought of eating dairy just feels terrible because it just doesn't sit well in my body. And then it would start with a couple crackers, and then I'd maybe feel a little bit of guilt on top of the anxiety. And then I would eat some cheese and crackers. And then I would feel anxious and guilt and then ashamed. And then all the physical ways I was feeling as well, like the bloated and just really puffy and potentially start to have a headache. And I would just kind of tuck all that under the rug. And then I would feel anxious and guilty and embarrassed or humiliated or ashamed. And then I would decide, okay, well, I ate some crackers and I ate some cheese and crackers, and maybe now I'll eat some ice cream. And so it's almost like the more intense my emotions got, the more I tucked them away and tried to push them under the rug, the more I ate, and then the more food I ate that caused me to feel physically uncomfortable. And so it just turned into this compounding snowball effect of feeling more uncomfortable emotionally and feeling more uncomfortable physically. And this is like the hamster on the wheel, where I would just wake up in the next morning and be like, okay, today's the day. Today's the day we're not going to do this. And lo and behold, I would maybe be okay and not binge for a day, not overeat at night for a day. Sometimes not though. Sometimes I would still do it again that night. And if I was able to not overeat for a day or 2 days or even a week, it was sheer grit and grind and willpower. And when you develop the skill of releasing emotions, this causes this layer and this phase of regular overeating to disappear. Because as soon as you are aware of what's happening, you have the skill to release the emotion in your body. So for me, I would have had the skill to release anxiety, or to release the guilt, or to release the shame, or to release the boredom, whatever it was. Release that emotion, and that desire to overeat, to distract myself, went away. And as you do this and you're working through regular overeating discomfort, what you will notice is when you release that emotion, you will see how good you feel on the other side, both emotionally and physically. So when I first started to do this, when I first started to release the emotion of anxiety and remind myself, okay, the food is not going to solve for the anxiety. I think it's going to, but I know by years and years of past experience, that's not going to happen. And so then what would happen is the anxiety would actually lessen. It's like the anxiety for me, and it's whatever emotion it might be for you. Maybe it's stress or overwhelm or boredom or frustration or something else. But the anxiety for me would then start to calm down. It would start to move and pass through my body. And all of a sudden, that super strong, out of control desire to want to eat food, it genuinely started to disappear. And then I started to feel so good physically in my body that I was like, ooh, the thought of binging tonight, the thought of intensely overeating, it just doesn't sound good at all. And so as you practice allowing emotions, releasing emotions, you start to feel much calmer, more peaceful, more in control emotionally. And that correlates to your food, because you start to also then feel physically better, and you start to see the simplicity of it. You start to feel so good in your body, and you do it with a sense of ease and without needing an intense amount of willpower that your brain is like, yo, we can of course keep doing this. And you heard that in Sue's journey last week, that for her, it really was that skill. And as she developed that skill and honed that skill and practiced that skill, it just made it easier and easier for her. And it is going to be the same for you if this is the phase you are currently in. And it has been for me, gosh, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years since I've experienced this type of just regular overeating discomfort, where I would look back on the food I ate and would have thought, obviously, I feel uncomfortable, right? I wasn't like, I wonder why I don't feel good. I'm like, well, think about all the food you just ate. Of course you feel uncomfortable. And this, I sort of gave you some examples, but I'll just give you one more example of, for me, was binging and eating, let's say, a tub of Moose Tracks ice cream. Do they still make Moose Tracks? I used to love me some Moose Tracks, like with those little peanut butter cups and the fudge swirls. And when we were really little, my sister and I, my younger sister and I, she always used to get so mad at me because there would be like really big holes in the Moose Tracks ice cream, because I would like dig out all the good stuff, obviously. And as I got older, I remember times like starting to eat a little bit of one of those tubs, and then I would end up eating almost the whole thing. And it's, just that wake up feeling, terrible feeling, go to bed feeling terrible, hoping it'll be gone in the morning, and it isn't. And the crazy thing is, for me at the time, I didn't even know how terrible I really was feeling. Because now the thoughts of even eating one scoop of any ice cream that's dairy ice cream, because my body has told me time and time again, with all of the signals, that it doesn't like dairy, that I get itchy skin, I would break out, I feel bloat, I feel intense constipation, I feel just like a tightness in my stomach that is like cringeworthy to me now, because I just remember it was so uncomfortable. It, for a while, was quite painful. And back then, I didn't even know that this is what I was living in. I didn't know that because I had acne on my face sometimes, or I felt really bloated in my body, or I wasn't like pooping on the regular and my stomach like felt so tight and cramped all of the time. I didn't even know it was because of my food. I was just like so used to living in it. And now your discomfort in this phase of regular overeating discomfort may be that extreme, or it may not be that extreme. It may be a little bit subtler, but know that sometimes it's hard for us to know what it feels like to feel like what I was saying in the beginning of the episode, to feel alive and vibrant and energized when we're in phase 1, when we're in regular overeating discomfort, because we're like a fish in water. We don't know that we're surrounded by water. And so when you develop the skill and even just start practicing it of releasing emotions. And we have many other podcast episodes on how to do that. Or if you're in the Naturally Thin for Life program, you can go to that module and refresh yourself. But when you release the emotions and you stop using food as a way to try to release emotions for yourself, you will see and open up the possibility for how amazing you truly can feel. So that is phase 1 of overeating discomfort. And I want to pause here for a minute and just say, I think it's really important to recognize that most weight loss techniques that I ever tried. So if you're anything like me, you may have had this experience as well, that most weight loss techniques try to have you willpower your way into never having this type of overeating discomfort, or maybe do, 6 days where you are avoiding this type of discomfort, and then 1 day of a cheat day where you can eat whatever you want in whatever quantity, and then you do experience some of this overeating discomfort. And for me, I didn't know there was layers 2 and 3. I didn't know there were phases 2 and 3 of discomfort to go through. I thought it was just this phase 1. So if you're like me, it's probably normal. And what I want you to see and experience and imagine for yourself is, what if you never experienced this type of overeating discomfort again? Because it truly is possible when you are just so in love with feeling so good in your body. Okay. So you're going to progress through phase 1, and then you're going to move on to phase 2. And phase 2 is what I call the fuzz phase. You can think about it as fuzz or puffy, but I just call it, this is the fuzz phase, where you eat something either in quantity or in combination. So, or in type of food. And what I mean by that is you may eat, let's say, eggs and toast, and in quantity, you may have looked back and been like, yeah, I definitely ate past being satisfied. Or let's say maybe you eat eggs and toast and you have a gluten sensitivity, but you in quantity didn't eat that much, but you still have some discomfort in your body after eating that meal. But it's not because of the quantity of food you ate. It's because you maybe ate gluten and your body is sensitive to gluten, right? So not the same. Quantity discomfort is because of the quantity of food you ate, and type discomfort is the type of food you ate in a particular combination that may cause discomfort. Right? Now, of course, it can potentially be both, where you overate in quantity a type of food or a combination of food that doesn't serve you. But in the fuzz phase, in phase 2, the fuzz phase, it can be one or the other. And I just like to start with, which one do you think it is when you are kind of evaluating, why do I think I feel this way? Why do I think I feel this sense of discomfort? But the discomfort you feel in this phase, in the fuzz phase, is you feel a sense of discomfort when you have eaten and overeaten in quantity or type, but you don't feel as heavy and weighed down as you do in layer 1. You might eat, and sometimes it feels like food isn't quite passing through your digestive tract quite right, or you might notice a bubbling or a gurgling in your belly. Maybe you have a slight headache after you've eaten something, or a sense of fuzziness or puffiness under your skin. You don't feel as good as usual. But this isn't the, oh my gosh, I ate 3 servings of dinner last night and I only intended to eat 1 and I was satisfied after 1, or, oh my gosh, I binged, or, oh, I went to this party and I just kept eating and eating and eating and I ate 10 cookies and I just felt so incredibly uncomfortable. That's not what this phase is. The fuzz phase is, yes, I either overate in quantity or I overate in type, and there's some discomfort in my body, but it isn't just an intense heaviness and weighed down feeling. And when you are in this phase, I'll give you a couple of examples. What you do is you become more and more skilled at listening to what your body is telling you, where you will start to notice and you will start to observe and know how your body really does feel when you eat certain quantities of food. Maybe when you eat certain foods at a certain time, or when you eat certain types of food. And what I mean by that is you may notice, okay, I didn't feel this sense of discomfort in phase 1. In the regular overeating discomfort, you aren't necessarily as attuned to the fuzz phase. And so what I mean by that is, in my personal phase 1, in my regular overeating discomfort, I could for sure go to Chipotle, let's say, and get a burrito bowl with some rice and some chicken and some guacamole and some salsa and maybe some cheese and some lettuce. And if I didn't eat like 3 of them, and I don't know if I ever ate 3 of them, but if I just had 1 of those, I would probably have been like, yeah, I don't feel terrible. Like, maybe I don't feel like super energized, but like, I don't feel terrible. And so I, in that phase 1, could have gone to Chipotle, eaten what I just described to you, and maybe would have had a little bit of some overeating discomfort, but I wouldn't have even known the discomfort that I was experiencing because, like I said before, I was like a fish in water. And in phase 2, in the fuzz phase, if I would have eaten that same thing, a Chipotle bowl with white rice, chicken, guacamole, salsa, cheese, and lettuce, I would have felt my digestive tract didn't feel as clean as usual. I would have for sure felt a puffiness or a fuzz under my skin. I would have maybe even felt a headache. And while I was in phase 1, if I would have eaten that and then eaten a bag of tortilla chips and another thing of guacamole, I would have been like, yeah, overeating discomfort. I feel just weighed down and really heavy and like I want to take a nap. But if I wouldn't have eaten the tortilla chips and the guacamole and just had the burrito bowl or just had the bowl, I would have noticed in phase 2, and this is the difference, right? Phase 1 is like eating all the things in type and quantity that aren't feeling good in my body. But phase 2, in the fuzz phase, I would have thought, maybe I would look back at that bowl and been like, in quantity, it doesn't seem like I should be feeling this discomfort. So maybe it's the type of food that I've eaten. And I would have maybe thought about it. And now I obviously know this to be true, but I would have maybe thought, maybe it is the cheese. I've just been noticing when I do eat dairy, my body feels like there's something like hard and it's stuck in my stomach. And I feel like a tense tightness in my stomach that doesn't feel good and like some extra gurgling. And I feel a little bit of a headache. So in the fuzz phase, I would have been like, okay, I don't think I overate that much in quantity, but maybe it was that cheese that did it. Or maybe it was the combination of an animal protein with the fat of the guacamole and a starch like the rice. Maybe that was it. I would have been just more curious. So that's the difference between phase 2 and phase 1. Phase 1 being regular overeating and phase 2 being the fuzz phase. And how you work through the fuzz phase is you get more and more skilled at listening to your body, understanding what your body is telling you. You're more and more skilled now because you've worked through phase 1 already. You're more and more skilled at releasing emotions from your body, not eating as a way to distract yourself from stress and restlessness and overwhelm and boredom. And so you're really then eating more just when you're hungry, eating to your intended satisfaction level, and then getting to know what different food feels like in your body. And as you're doing this and you're starting to feel physically better, you're not really encountering that phase 1 regular overeating, super weighed down, heavy feeling anymore. You are falling more and more in love with feeling really good in your body. You're starting to get hooked on feeling energized and alive and vibrant in your body more often than not. And so as your mind and your body start to get hooked on this feeling, on feeling so incredible in your body, then your brain starts to notice when you don't feel that way. And you start to be curious about it and wonder, and you start to experiment, and you start to get to know what foods really serve your body more and more. And for me, it's been years since I have experienced this phase of discomfort as well. And I think I've shared on the podcast before, and if not, I've definitely shared it in the program before on some of our live calls, that I used to love, love, love cake and cupcakes. And so in phase 1, overeating discomfort, I used to eat like a lot of quantity of cake or cupcakes and just feel terrible. And then in phase 2, my fuzz phase, I used to then eat vegan cupcakes, vegan gluten-free cupcakes, because I started to notice a lot of times I would eat gluten, it wouldn't sit right in my body. And I started to notice when I ate dairy, it really didn't sit right in my body. And so in phase 2, the fuzz phase, I would make my own vegan gluten-free cakes and cupcakes. And there was a store I could go to that had gluten-free vegan cupcakes. It's like a tongue twister, gluten-free vegan cupcakes. And so when I was in the fuzz phase, I would eat these types of cakes and cupcakes, and I wouldn't feel the overeating, super heavy, super weighed down discomfort that I felt in phase 1. But I did experience some of the fuzz phase where I would eat these still gluten-free vegan cupcakes or cake, and I would notice a headache in my body. I wouldn't feel terrible, but I would just notice there's this headache. I wasn't feeling as alive and vibrant and energized as I knew was possible for me. And this is why it's so important to think about being in your body and feeling that aliveness and vibrance and energy. Because if I would have just set the intention for myself of, I don't feel terrible, then I would have stayed in this fuzz phase, because I would have thought, it's not as bad as when I used to eat like half a cake. Like, it's not as bad as when I used to eat like 6 cupcakes. So who cares? Right? But my brain was like, I don't feel as optimal as usual. I don't feel as energized as usual. I'm noticing this slight headache that's happening in my head. And I would notice some angst as well. I would notice some anxiety, some jitteriness after I would eat that type of food. And I went a year or so, just very occasionally still having a gluten-free vegan cupcake or cake. And we used to have a birthday celebration at our house, and I used to make the gluten-free vegan cupcake or cake. And I'd be like, whatever, it's fine. It was worth it to me when I was in the fuzz phase. And then I distinctly remember the last time making a particular gluten-free vegan cupcake, which, yes, it tasted amazing. But I experienced this headache feeling afterwards. I ate like the smallest, slightest piece. And I remember having, within about 10 minutes, a very intense headache and jitteriness in my body. And like my skin just felt like there was a layer of puffiness underneath it. I felt fuzzy. And I thought in that moment, I'm like, this just isn't worth it to me. I started to become so hooked, so in love with feeling alive and vibrant and energized, feeling light and fit and strong and nourished in my body, that in that moment, that cake took me out of feeling that way. And for me, I just thought, I don't care how good it tastes. I just love feeling incredible more than I love the taste of the temporary minute or two of eating that cake. Always. And I've never eaten cake since. And I don't ever tell myself I can't have cake. What I do tell myself is I genuinely don't even want it. It actually isn't even like something that crosses my mind ever. I just, when I see it or I'm at a party or I notice it, I'm like, no thanks. And my brain doesn't have a second thought about it. And the reason that has happened for me, the reason that is now just my habitual way of thinking, is my brain sees that cake as taking away from something I want, from taking away from feeling incredible in my body. So I never, ever, ever tell myself I can't have cake, I can't have cupcakes, I can't have ice cream. Never. Those sentences never cross my mind. I just think I want to feel so good. I love feeling energized. I love feeling fit and strong. I love feeling limitless and infinite and just so alive in my body that the cake, it's like I don't even see it almost. And the reason that has now happened for me is because I allowed myself to progress through each of these 3 phases. From phase 1, regular overeating discomfort, to phase 2, the fuzz layer, and then into phase 3. And phase 3 is the magic of nuanced discomforts that you experience. We're going to call phase 3 the subtlety phase. And in the subtlety phase, you start to notice more and more subtleties like I just described. You start to notice, okay, so even though I ate the smallest piece of gluten-free vegan cake, I noticed I had this headache and it was like quite intense and this anxious feeling. And then I was like, okay, I think I'm good. And then you start to notice more and more subtleties. So for example, I might eat, let's say, a ribeye on a salad. And I was traveling recently and they had this, I don't know if it was ribeye, it was some type of steak salad that was just so good. It was so good. I wanted it every day because I just felt so good. It tasted so good. I'm like, great. I love this. It's like magic. Let's go. But I have also had ribeye on a salad or steak on a salad where my body just like was gurgling a little bit. And there was a time where I remember eating something like that and it had some pears in the salad, or it had some raspberries in the salad, or it had some strawberries in the salad. And for me, when I combine fruit with animal protein, there is some bubbliness that happens in my stomach. And that often happens because the water content and the pH level required to digest fruit is very different than that's required to digest animal protein. And so there's a lot of science around why those foods often don't work in combination with each other, but your body's going to send you all of the cues. So I would just notice. And I also knew intellectually from my past fanatical research phase was that, okay, maybe it was just the fruit in the salad that wasn't sitting quite right. So in the subtlety phase, right, I'm still probably feeling pretty good, but I just noticed the smallest subtleties, like, maybe that fruit didn't sit quite right in my stomach with the steak. So then maybe the next time I would go and have the same thing, let's say at a restaurant, and notice, okay, well, I didn't have the fruit on it this time. And I feel so much better. So interesting. And then I would just be like, okay, note to self. Now I remember that. This is how I feel even more energized and more alive and more vibrant. And hear me when I say this. Never, ever, ever from the place of telling myself, I can't have that. That thought isn't a thought I ever think. I never tell myself I can't have that. Isn't that crazy? Like in the typical traditional way of losing weight, I used to tell myself all of the time, I can't have that. I can't have that. I can't have that. I can't have that. Let me, work that off and I can't have that and I can't have that. And I just that used to be the story that played in my mind all of the time. I can't have this. I can't have that. And now I never tell myself that. And so you do not need to tell yourself, I can't have that. I want you to focus more and more on what is going to allow me to feel alive and vibrant and energized in my body. And when you're in the subtlety phase, when you're in phase 3, subtleties, and you notice these slight discomforts in your body, you learn to recognize them and you learn to love them. Because it is your body giving you clear instructions. It's your body telling you which food combinations feel best. It's your body telling you what time of day feels best when you satisfy your hunger. It's your body telling you when it's even eaten just the slightest bit too much. It's your body telling you which hunger levels feel best for you with potentially your work schedule or points in your cycle or seasons in your environment. In the subtlety phase, you have a robust satisfaction vocabulary that makes it easy to stop eating at the optimal time. You cannot get to phase 3, the subtlety phase, and be telling yourself, well, my goal is to not feel terrible. In order to get to the subtlety phase, which is where you live in naturally thin land, in the subtlety phase, you have to train your brain to think about what is it like to feel energized and alive and vibrant? And you may not even know exactly in this moment. You don't need to. I just want you to think about it and imagine what food allows you to create that in your body. And you're going to make mental observations about what food allows you to feel that way. And it's going to have a compound effect as you work through each of these 3 phases. And in the subtlety phase, you are deeply, madly in love with feeling energized, alive, vibrant, and limitless in your own body. That anytime you feel any discomfort, you listen to it because you genuinely do not enjoy any discomfort in your body. So phase 3, the subtlety phase, is where you live when you are naturally thin. It's where nuanced discomforts become more and more and more nuanced, more and more subtle, because you just develop the skill of listening to them, of noticing them, of observing them. And here's the other thing about phase 3, the subtlety phase, is that you don't want them. You don't want the nuances and the subtleties to disappear. Hear me on this. So many of you are like, I just want all the discomfort to go away. And what you're really saying in that moment is you want all of the phase 1 and potentially the phase 2 discomfort to go away. So I get you. And we can totally get there. But you don't want any and all discomfort to disappear when you're in the subtlety phase. Because each subtlety is just your body giving you a clearer and clearer and clearer roadmap to being in the most alive and vibrant and energized body as possible. So now, if I go back to my Chipotle bowl example, right? In phase 1, I would have maybe overeaten in the quantity and type of the Chipotle bowl, and then maybe had some tortilla chips and some more guacamole, and just felt totally terrible, wanted to take a nap. That's phase one. Phase two, I maybe would have taken out the cheese and been like, okay, I think the dairy is causing some fuzz. And, I'm not going to have the tortilla chips and the guacamole. I'm just going to have the rice and the chicken and the guacamole and the salsa and the lettuce and just eat that. And that's maybe where I would have lived in phase two, in the fuzz phase. And in phase three, I know for me, when I combine chicken and rice, it doesn't feel good in my body. So I may instead go get a Chipotle bowl and have chicken and the guacamole and some rice and maybe some extra of the fajita veggies and just like love it and totally enjoy it. And so then when I eat that Chipotle bowl, I feel energized and alive and optimal. I feel so good in my body. And it's just that subtle difference of listening to what my body is telling me that allows me to feel that way. Or maybe if I'm like really into the rice that day, I'm like, maybe I'll have some rice with the guacamole and I just like won't have some of the chicken today. And like I said before, it's so funny. I'm just thinking about how I think about it. Like when I would be standing there ordering, I would never tell myself, oh, I can't have that chicken. I literally, the way I've trained my brain to think and how I want all of you to think is, how do I want to feel when I'm done eating this Chipotle bowl? That's what I ask myself. And then I'm like, okay, I want to feel fit and light and cleaned out and nourished. And then be like, okay, today I'm going to eat the chicken and the guacamole and the lettuce and the fajita veggies. Or today I'm going to eat the rice and the guacamole and the fajita veggies instead, right? Like, so it all comes from asking myself, how do I want to feel when I'm done? And notice in these examples, especially in phase three, in the subtlety phase, where you're going to live for the rest of your life, right? Remember, there is no perfection land, which is amazing. You don't need to be in perfection land to be naturally thin. When you're in phase three, in the subtlety phase, you will always have subtleties that you're noticing. But notice when I'm sharing them with you, I'm simply curious and interested in what my body has to tell me. I'm not forcing myself to do anything. I'm not restricting. I'm not depriving myself. I'm just like, what does my body have to say about this? And I listen, and I don't always listen perfectly because there is no perfect. So another example I'm going to give you, and this will be the last example I share with you, is that I know when I drink 2 kombuchas in a day, my stomach has the most subtle, like extra gurgle. There's almost this like slight dehydrated feeling in my body, and it's super, super subtle. But the best way I can think about of how to describe it is it's like the cells in my body are just a little tighter and more shrivelly and not as bouncy and liquidy as usual. And it is super, super subtle. So I know this. I've experienced this. But there was a period of time where I was letting go of my desire for wine. I was releasing my desire for wine. And I would be around people, especially in social situations, and I would have a second kombucha. And I would know, okay, I'm going to have this slight dehydrated feeling where my cells just feel a little tighter and a little more shrivelly than usual. And I would know that intellectually, but I would still consciously make the choice to have the second kombucha because I knew I'm going to feel so much better than if I have a glass of wine. And I just want to have the second kombucha. It was sort of worth it to me at the time. And so even though I knew this subtle difference, I still chose to have that second kombucha. And I went ahead and had 2 kombuchas. And then recently, this is very recently, like within the last month, I was away on a trip and I had 2 kombuchas in a day. And a lot of times it's in social situations because sometimes I have a little extra anxiety in social situations. So maybe we'll do a whole other episode on social anxiety and eating. But when I was there, I made the conscious choice. I knew, okay, I'm going to have this slight dehydrated feeling in my body where my cells feel a little tenser and tighter and a little more shrivelly, but I'm still going to choose to have the second kombucha. And afterwards, it's kind of like the cake. Afterwards, I thought, I knew that subtle discomfort was there. But this time, it wasn't worth it. So I'm never beating myself up. I'm never being harsh on myself. I'm never forcing myself to do anything. I'm just so curious about the subtleties that my body is telling me. And this is where the freedom of being naturally thin is. This is where you are just so in love with the lightness and the energy and the vibrance that your body has been craving. And like I started the podcast saying, your body sheds weight as you overcome each layer, as you work through each phase of discomfort, the regular overeating, the fuzz, and then when you land and start to live in the subtlety phase, where the subtleties and the nuances become more and more nuanced, more and more subtle. And you really enjoy getting to know your body in that way. And this is why it's so important to lose weight in this way, because you're learning the same skill. Hear me. You're learning the same skill all along the way. You're learning to release emotions. You're learning to decide how you want to feel when you're done eating. You're learning to hear your body tell you through some discomfort and through the absence of discomfort, through feeling energized and alive and vibrant, and then noticing when you're not. You're learning and using and honing those skills through each phase. And so all you're doing is rinsing and repeating the same skills, getting better and better and better at them. And it's why you never need a maintenance mode. And it's why then you get to live the rest of your life this way. This is the automation and the habitualization of becoming naturally thin. And I so believe we're designed to eat and live this way. We've just learned another way, right? Little kids, we don't have to talk them out of overeating an intense quantity of food, right? But we learn to use food to distract ourselves. We learn to overeat in both type and quantity for a plethora of reasons. But when you truly fall in love with feeling alive and vibrant and energized, fit, light, strong, clean, nourished, healthy, however you want to describe the feeling of naturally thin in your body, when you fall so deeply, madly in love with that, you will never tell yourself you can't have food. You will never restrict or deprive. You will only gravitate and have more desire for food that tastes good and allows you to feel the way you want to feel in your body. And when you have this skill of listening to your body, releasing emotions, feeling so amazing and incredible in your body, you will never want to go back to phase 1 or 2. You will never think about or be worried about, well, what if I start to feel that fuzz again or that intense overeating discomfort again? You never worry about it. And if and ever you do go back into those phases, when you do, it doesn't turn into days or weeks or months of overeating. You get right back to the subtlety phase. So there was a time in my life where I was kind of between phase 2, the fuzz phase, and phase 3, the subtlety phase, and I would kind of oscillate and go back and forth. And the more and more I developed the skill of deciding how I want to feel in my body, falling deeply, madly in love with feeling energized and light and fit and nourished and cleaned out and healthy and alive and vibrant and all the things, and releasing my emotions, then the easier and easier it got to just live in the subtlety phase. So much so that I don't know if I really necessarily put words to it until I was preparing this podcast episode for you, that I thought, it's been at least a good couple of years since I have been in the fuzz phase. And so the better and better you get at these skills, the easier and easier it is to not only be at your naturally thin weight, but to feel more and more and more energized, alive, and vibrant. And here's the other thing I'm going to say before I end today, is that I was at my naturally thin weight when I was in the fuzz phase. So I would get to my naturally thin weight sometimes in the overeating phase, in phase 1. There was a lot of ups and downs. But I spent a year or two between kind of the fuzz phase and the subtlety phase. And who knows, maybe there's another phase that I will uncover and share with all of you in the future. But once I was in that fuzz phase, kind of oscillating between the fuzz and the subtlety phase, my weight stayed the same. And it would be the amount of time that it took me to get back to feeling alive and vibrant and energized in my body. The time it takes me to get to that optimal level for myself now, it's shorter and shorter and shorter. So even if you aren't in the subtlety phase, that doesn't mean you're not at your naturally thin weight or you can't get to your naturally thin weight. It just makes it easier for you to feel so incredible that you will never want to do anything to deviate from that. And I noticed for myself, I'm going on a trip again coming up in a few weeks, it's a group of women, and a couple of them were talking about going out for a nice dinner, and it's in New York City, and doing some fun things at night, and all that would entail. And in my mind, I thought, I just love feeling so good. I love hanging out with these other women, but I love getting sleep. I love waking up in the morning, feeling energized and light and airy. And I don't love eating a ton of food late at night. And so I just noticed in that moment that I'm just so in love with feeling good that sometimes means for me. And this by all means is not something you need to do. It's just me that I don't have a desire to go do that. And I was at the same weight several years ago when that was something I did enjoy. So my weight was the same then that it is now. But my experience in my own skin now is 10 times more energy, 10 times more alive, 10 times more vibrant, where it's like, I have fallen so deeply in love with feeling good that there isn't a whole lot that will ever take me out of wanting to break that for myself. All right. So like I said at the beginning, I wanted to share with you what we are doing inside of the Naturally Thin for Life program so that you can see how to reach your naturally thin weight, so that you can see how the freedom of being naturally thin is so much closer than you think. I love what Sue shared last week about her experience thinking like, nope, there's no way this is going to work. And then she started using the process, using the workbook, and she was like, oh my God, it's working. And so that's what I want for all of you. Oh my God, it's working, and it's way easier and simpler, and it's so much more freeing, and I have so much more time and energy than I ever thought possible. So right now you can get 30 days of access to the entire Naturally Thin for Life program. And you can do this before you decide to become a lifetime member. So right now we're offering for just $97. You can join the Naturally Thin for Life program. You get access for a full 30 days to the 5-step process, the live weekly calls, the 24/7 written coaching. You get access to our entire bonus archive as well. And you can see how simple and easy and how your body starts to fall in love with the feeling of being naturally thin as you start to lose weight starting day one. And so as soon as you join for this 30 days of access, we are going to ship you your workbook. And so you have your companion guide. It will arrive if you're in the US a couple of days later. We quick ship it to you. And if you're outside of the US, it takes a couple extra days, but you get your workbook within a couple of days. And then you start going through the program and you start showing your body really how energized you can feel and how easily your body can start to shed the weight. And you do that for a full 30 days. And then you can decide if you want to become a lifetime member and join us. And when you do become a lifetime member, you not only get lifetime access to the entire program, but you also get access to the live calls every week, to support from me every week, and my perspective on what's happening in your brain. So anytime there's anything you want help with, you can come and ask me. And you also get access to any and all future bonuses that we do in the future. And you get to see and be surrounded by other women who are having an experience of being so alive and vibrant and energized in their body that they also don't have any desire to overeat. And so you get to hear, as well as women work through obstacles that come with that, like going to family gatherings or having the holidays coming up or being around people that maybe have a different opinion. And you get to hear us coach and work on anything like that comes up for them so that you can apply that to your life. So if you're interested in joining us for 30 days of access to the Naturally Thin for Life program, head over to lauradixoncoaching.com/join. And I can't wait to see you there, because what I want more than anything for all of you listening and for any woman that wants this is to see that not only is the freedom of being naturally thin available to you, but that it is so much closer than you think. And it might even be better than you imagine. All right, my friends, I will talk with you all next week. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Friend, if you are loving what you are learning here on the podcast, you have to come check out my Naturally Thin for Life program. It is my on-demand lifetime access program where I teach you brand new concepts not taught here on the podcast. And I will walk you through exactly how to implement all of the tools I teach you here so that they become just a part of you. You will learn exactly how to understand your specific brain and your specific body so that you become naturally thin for the rest of your life and you no longer struggle with your weight. Inside of the Naturally Thin for Life program, you can also receive live help so that you consistently make progress and reach your goal. I will teach you how to accelerate your naturally thin journey in a sustainable way so that the change becomes permanent. The best part is that it's risk-free. You either love it or I will give you your money back. If you are ready to finally be naturally thin for life, join us at lauradixoncoaching.com/work with me. That's LAURADIXON coaching.com and click on the Work With Me tab. I cannot wait to see you there.